A shady contractor ruined my house and blocked my number, so I bought his boss's company and fired him myself. Before we get into this insane story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you enjoy real-life stories packed with scams, betrayal, and perfectly executed revenge, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Imagine trusting a contractor with your home, only for him to destroy it and block your number afterward. Here's exactly how it all went down. They say you get what you pay for, but I paid $40,000 to have my roof caved in. Mike was a friend of a friend who promised a luxury kitchen remodel in 3 weeks. Instead, he ripped out my load-bearing walls without a permit, left my plumbing leaking into the basement, and then blocked my number when I asked for his insurance info. Mike thought I was just another stressed-out homeowner who would eventually give up. He didn't realize that my day job is inspecting bridges for the Department of Transportation. I don't just know where the bodies are buried. I know exactly how many code violations he committed before lunch. Mike showed up in a shiny truck he clearly couldn't afford, talking about custom finishes and artisan quality. I gave him the deposit. 2 days later, my house looked like a war zone. He'd cut through a main support beam and patched it with duct tape and scrap plywood. When I pointed out that my ceiling was literally sagging, Mike laughed. "You're overreacting, princess. It's settling. I'll be back tomorrow." He never came back. He stopped answering calls, and his company address turned out to be a P.O. box in a strip mall. I did some digging. Mike wasn't the owner. He was a subcontractor working for a massive regional developer called Apex Home Solutions. He'd been pocketing the material money and using leftover scrap from other jobs. I didn't sue Mike. Not yet. I went straight to the CEO of Apex, the man who signed Mike's paychecks. I invited him to my house for a consultation on a new project, making sure to mention I was a senior structural engineer. The CEO, a guy named Rick, showed up with his best lead foreman. Guess who? Mike. Mike walked into my gutted kitchen, his face turning a shade of gray that matched the mold growing on my damp subfloor. "Ah, Mike," I said, smiling like a shark. "Glad you could make it. I believe you were right in the middle of settling my ceiling with that duct tape." Rick looked at the sagging beam, then he looked at Mike. "You did this? Under the Apex name?" I handed Rick a 50-page binder, I said. Every photo, every timestamp, every fraudulent invoice Mike sent me. But more importantly, I showed him the letter from the city inspector. Since Mike didn't pull permits, the entire house was flagged for emergency demolition. "That's a $500,000 liability for your company, Rick." Mike tried to lie. "She told me not to get permits. She wanted it done fast." "I have the recordings, Mike," I said, pointing to my Nest Cam. "I also have the proof that you've been selling Apex's high-end lumber on Facebook Marketplace and replacing it with rot-prone pine in the houses you build." Rick didn't just fire Mike. He nearly had a heart attack. To avoid a massive lawsuit that would have bankrupted his firm, Rick made me an offer. He would rebuild my entire house for free, using his best crew, and give me a 40% stake in his subsidiary company to keep me from reporting the fraud to the state licensing board. I took the deal. My first act as a part owner? I sat in the office and waited for Mike to come in to collect his final check. "You're not getting a check, Mike," I said, spinning around in the leather chair. "Actually, you're getting a bill. We've audited your last 5 jobs. You've stolen over $80,000 in materials. You can sign this confession and return the truck, or we can let the police waiting in the lobby handle the settling of your accounts. My kitchen is now a masterpiece. Actual marble, actual support beams, and 0 duct tape. Mike is currently serving 3 years for grand larceny and insurance fraud. Every time I cook a meal, I think about how he thought I was an easy target. He wanted to build a career on a shaky foundation, so I just decided to pull the last brick. If you're going to scam someone, make sure they don't have a degree in how to tear things down." I didn't call Mike. I called the corporate office of Apex Home Solutions and spoke directly to the owner, Rick. I told him I was a senior structural engineer looking to consult on a troubled residential site that might lead to a multi-million-dollar city contract. Rick arrived at my house 30 minutes early, desperate to impress. "Thanks for having me, Ms. Vance. I brought my star site lead to help walk the property." The passenger door of the Apex truck swung open and out stepped Mike. He was wearing a brand new vest and holding a clipboard, looking like the poster boy for professional construction. He was mid-sentence, laughing at a joke Rick had made until his eyes landed on me. His clipboard didn't just slip, it hit the gravel like a lead weight. "Mike, you remember this project, don't you?" I asked, my voice dripping with fake hospitality. "The one you blocked my number on 3 days ago?" Rick's smile vanished. He looked at Mike, then at the house, then back at me. "Wait, you two know each other. Mike, I thought you said you were finishing up a referral project on the other side of town." I, Rick, she's crazy. Mike stammered, his face turning a blotchy red. She's a nightmare client. I told her the materials were back-ordered and she lost it. Is that right, Mike? I led them into the kitchen. The smell of damp wood and drywall dust was thick. I pointed up at the sagging ceiling, where the repair was visible. Is back-ordered materials the reason you used 3 rolls of heavy-duty duct tape and a rusted car jack to support a 4,000-pound second floor load? Rick walked over to the support beam and touched the duct tape. He peeled a piece back, revealing the splintered wood underneath. He looked like he was about to vomit. Mike, Rick said, his voice dangerously low, did you use company-issued steel headers on this job? I had to improvise, Rick. The delivery was late. He didn't improvise, Rick, I said, handing the CEO a thick folder. He sold your steel headers on a local contractor swap group for $1,200 cash. I have the screenshots. I also have the video from my doorbell camera showing him loading Apex Premium oak flooring into an unmarked van at midnight, only to return the next morning with these budget laminate scraps. I stepped closer to Mike, who was backed up against the very wall he'd ruined. But here's the best part, Rick, I continued. Since this work was done under the Apex business license without a permit, and because it's structurally unsound, the city has officially condemned the house as of an hour ago. That's a massive liability claim against your insurance, unless, of course, you'd like to discuss a more private resolution. Rick turned to Mike, his eyes flaming. Give me the keys to the truck, Mike, and the corporate card, now. Rick didn't just take Mike's keys, he took his dignity. He stood in my ruined kitchen and watched as Mike walked down my driveway in the rain, looking for an Uber because he was no longer allowed to touch a company vehicle. Miss Vance? Rick said, rubbing his temples. If this hits the news or the licensing board, I'm done. My insurance will triple and my reputation is gone. What do you want? I sat on one of the few pieces of furniture Mike hadn't managed to scratch. I don't just want my house fixed, Rick. I want a seat at the table. You have a dozen Mikes out there cutting corners and burying your company in debt. You need a chief of operations who knows how to spot a structural lie before it's plastered over. Rick knew a checkmate when he saw one. He couldn't afford a $500,000 lawsuit and a criminal fraud investigation. He agreed to a settlement that made me a 30% partner in Apex Home Solutions and gave me full authority over their quality control. 1 week later, I was sitting in the corner office at the Apex headquarters. The mahogany desk was a lot sturdier than my kitchen ceiling. There was a knock at the door. It was Mike, looking disheveled, thinking he was there to beg Rick for his job back. I spun the chair around. The blood drained from his face so fast I thought he'd pass out. You? What are you doing in Rick's chair? It's my chair now, Mike, I said, sliding a thick legal document across the desk. Rick didn't tell you? I'm the new head of quality and compliance, and I've spent the last 48 hours auditing your artisan projects. I tapped the paper. We found the missing steel headers, Mike. We found the ghost invoices for premium marble that turned out to be painted plywood. Total theft from the company, $92,000. You have 2 choices. You sign this promissory note to pay every cent back over the next 10 years, or I hand this folder to the district attorney. Oh, and your contractor's license? I've already filed the paperwork for a permanent revocation. Mike looked like a man who had finally hit a load-bearing wall he couldn't duct tape his way out of. He signed. My house is finally finished. It took a crew of actual professionals 3 weeks to undo Mike's settling, but it's now the strongest structure on the block. Mike is currently working as a day laborer for a landscaping crew, since he's legally barred from touching a power tool or a blueprint for the rest of his life. He thought he was playing a game of hide the mistake. He didn't realize that when you're dealing with an engineer, the truth is built into the foundation. And my foundation? It's never been more solid.